The DF Commander MK2 software allows operators to remotely control and monitor Rhotheta Direction Finder systems. Operators will be able to see antenna sites and signal bearings displayed over a map in real time. When multiple sites are receiving a bearing on the same frequency, then we can triangulate a target's location. DF Commander can be configured with the RT300, RT500L, RT800, and the RT1000 over a TCP over IP connection. Today, we will be setting up two fixed sites, one with the RT300 and the other one with an RT500L. Let's start by creating two sites for our antenna. Let's press the Setup button on the top bar. Here on the General tab, we can edit some basic items like our file directory paths, name of our client, GPS format. We can assign colors to certain frequencies, and we can also add or remove our favorite frequencies. Right now, we don't need to make any changes, so let's move on. Pressing the DF Systems tab on the sidebar will allow us to add DFs to our server. Let's create two servers, one for each site. Up top, we can see our system info. Here we have system, GPS, heading, and antenna. And under it, we have some info about our system and antenna. Now let's go to System Setup. Here we can edit some general settings for our system. Our DF system is a mobile, so let's leave that. Here we have our unique system ID. Next will be our system name. Let's call this Site 1. Here we have time. Let's leave it set to the local machine. And last we have valid bearing sector. This allows us to set up boundaries that allow our antenna to only work in certain sectors. For now, let's leave it at full range. Now we can press close. If we had a GPS, we would go in and we would have to configure that with a connection over the server. And that would be the same for heading. And now let's go into antenna setup. Our first site, we're going to set up with an RT300. So let's change this from the RT1000 to the RT300. Next, we have mechanical correction. This would be changed if there was any offset with the insulation. For now, let's leave that 0. Upside down is the vertical orientation of the antenna. Let's leave that up. Next, we have orientation. This will be how the antenna is oriented to either north or true north. Here we have a few different options. Next is variation. Our variation here in Florida is going to be 5 degrees to west. Our position, let's pick our position directly from the map. So let's pick right here. We can right click and then copy that coordinate, go back into setup, and we can see all our settings have saved. So for that position, let's just paste that in and set that. Now we have altitude. That's the altitude of the antenna itself. Our expected transmitter height. The standard deviation. That is going to be based on your system. Typically, that is going to be 3 degrees. For the RT1000, it is 1 degree. but I would refer to your user manual and that'll tell you. And finally, we have additional attenuation. If there is anything additional that you have added to your system, you would add this here. Now we can close that. And if we go back to our map, we can now see our first site is there. Now let's configure our second site. So let's say we built our site right here. We go back into setup, and now we can go to our second site. And we will just repeat, and we will just call this site 2. For this one, we will be setting up an RT500M. It will say no correction. Variation, it's going to be 5 degrees west. Position, we will paste in our new position. And we'll keep everything else the same. So now when I go back to our map, we have our 2 sites. Now for our first site, we're going to add a new channel. So we're going to press setup, and we're going to change our protocol type to the RT300. And for our channel name, let's just call it RT300. If we had a rack number, we can change that number here. And then this is all the info coming from the antenna itself. The control units on all the Rhotheta systems have a dedicated RS-232 port for remote connections. For DF Commander MK2 to be able to receive data from the RS-232 port, we will have to use a serial to LAN converter, such as a MOXA endport device. For this example, I'm using a standard RS-232 to USB adapter. And we can see on our device managers, that's going to be COM8. That is our serial port. I am able to convert my serial data to a TCP over IP server using this application. Here we can see our local IP address is going to be 169.254.10.213 with a port of 5001. Now let's enter that into DF Commander. Now let's enter that into DF Commander. Press connect. And as you can see, all our status came out green, so we're good to go. We have some basic information like our frequency, our signal level. We can edit that frequency, and that will update the DCU in real time. And now if we go to our map, we can see we have that bearing information being displayed. Some troubleshooting for the RT300. If you hit Menu, Setup, Serial, here you can see some information such as your RX type. I want to make sure we're on 232 for this example, and our baud rate we can adjust as needed. Now, let's set up Site 2 using the RT500M. both the RT500M and the RT800 have a dedicated LAN port on the rear of the display control unit. For this example, I have connected that LAN port into my network. Let's go back into setup. Let's go to our site and let's add that 500M the same way we added the 300. Here, we'll select the RT500M. For the channel, let's call this the RT500M. To get the network information when using the LAN cable, we'll go into Setup, Interface, and we can see we have an option here for LAN configuration. If we needed to change these values for our network, we would press Edit Values, and here we can adjust. Pressing OK will ask us to restart. Leave 1 in this case. In our case, our IP address is going to be 169.254.66.5 with a port of 9999. As you can see, we are connected. And if we go back to our map, we now have 2 sites green. From our map view, we can see both sites are active. On our sidebar, we can see the status, both are green. We are not receiving the signal on the 500M, but we are receiving a signal on the 300. If we wanted to adjust the frequency on the RT500F, we would go into Bearing. You can see we are on site 2 with the channel 500M. If we wanted to change that, we would go here and we can edit the value. So we will set it to 121.650 and we can see that adjusted properly. We can also change our sensitivity by sliding up. And if we slide back down and go back to our map, we can see those lines are both active. Keep in mind, DF Commander MK2 has a triangulation feature, but we have not set that up for this example. Thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact us at info@rhothetaint.com.